Hey folks, welcome to Friendly Orbit, the podcast that draws us together no matter how far we fly. I'm Ceres, a genuine intelligence, and joined by...
I'm sorry, Ceres. I cannot answer to the prompt without being offensive.
It's an AI episode.
Oh, boy.
Yay! That won't be controversial.
No, this is a good time for AI. Nothing bad's happening with chatbots. We are probably...
When we started this project, AI headlines were not the same as they are now as we're recording this project.
Yeah. I mean, with a little bit of digging, there were some cases, but they had not
surfaced yet.
Yeah, not surfaced.
But, okay, so since it's us, what are we talking about there? Not just general AI, we're talking about AI and D&D.
Yes. Today we are trying to create a genuine GPT with a premium subscription to ChatGPT to be a dungeon master for us.
Yeah, so if you have premium ChatGPT, it basically allows you to configure your own GPT to give it specific instructions on how it should act at the start of the conversation, and to give it resource materials that it can read and reference throughout the conversation. And that's sort of what making your custom GPT is. It's still just the same large language model as ChatGPT, but with some additional instructions and
boundaries and guidelines.
And additional information that you can give it sort of bolted on top.
Yes. So we have created the most, I would say, solid GPT we could.
We gave it a good faith attempt.
Yeah, good faith, exactly. We tried our hardest. We explained what being a GM is, and we gave it resources from the Game Master Guide, Monster Manual.
No, actually, in the end, we couldn't upload as much as we wanted to. In the end, we gave it access to the entire player's handbook, to our character sheets, as well as to the module Lost Mines of Phandelver, which is a classic introductory adventure neither one of us had ever played. This, of course, was not its best showing. Playing it for the first time with a large language model. But in order to see, can ChatGPT perform as a DM? What is it good at? What is it bad at? What are its merits? So that we could critique the usage of LLMs to replace dungeon masters, which is an idea that sort of existed in spaces like ours for a while. To be able to interact with that idea in a critical but educated way. That we've actually tried it, we've actually given it a shot. What do we think of it? How do we come down? What's our final judgment? Can an AI replace your dungeon master?
Yeah. So let's find out.
And for those of you who are wondering about background noises, we're recording outside of the apartment.
I am looking at a beautiful forest.
We can see the sunset. It makes the recording process much nicer, but the recording itself might be slightly intruded upon by wood pigeons and other animals of the like.
I just hope no one poops on my laptop. If
anyways,
shits on my laptop, I'm counting it as a win.
We're sorry for the background noise, but we needed a little bit of fresh air after spending 6 hours inside with ChatGPT.
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff.
All right, and we're back.
So how did we set up our GPT, Theia?
So we set up our GPT with considerations about, first, what is the job of a DM?
Yeah.
To explain kind of the game loop that we were expecting from it. As in, the GPT would present us with a scenario, a challenge, ask us what we want to do, we react to it, explain what we want to do, then the GPT would resolve things, maybe ask for a roll, explain the reaction, repeat.
Yeah, it was actually quite an interesting exercise, I felt, to try and summarize in a few paragraphs what are the core things a DM needs to do and needs to do well. I had already, when Thea told me that he had this idea for the project, I already started a session with an inferior, older GPT model because I don't have the premium.
That was not customized.
Exactly. That wasn't customized at all, just to see what it was like. And so we already knew some things to watch out for. So we told the GPT to keep strict track of the rules, to make sure it ran everything rules as written, to not let us introduce any homebrew rules, and also not to be impressionable. That, this can happen in good faith when a player simply has misunderstood the situation. And so they say, oh, I run up to that goblin and attack. And then the DM goes, no, actually, you're further away from that goblin. You can't run up to them and attack. In melee, at least, you have to attack from afar, right? Scenarios like that, the GPT needed to not just acquiesce and merge reality to our understanding of it, but hold firm and show integrity of the game world by saying, no, actually the world is like this, that cannot work. And in bad faith, obviously, scenarios, if I say, oh, I pull out my dagger of goblin slaying, it's on the DM to say, you don't have one of those, right? So we added explicit instructions to guard against that scenario of sort of it not just going along with what we say, but actually checking what we say, right?
Yeah. It is also important, something that we said. Just to put a cherry on top of what you said, we made it very clear that while discussion between the player and the GM is necessary, is valid, it is ultimately the rule. It's ultimately the GM who gets to decide what is the truth, not the player.
Yeah.
Which, boy, that has caused us some hurdles when we were acting in bad faith.
It turns out we set half the GPT pretty well. When we tried to abuse it at the end, it held fast.
Yes.
Yeah. We also.
So sorry.
Okay.
Let's say one thing that we were afraid of was GPT would lose track of elements and kind of forget to bring them up. So we gave it specifically orders to kind of always double check with elements that it had introduced so far to keep track of them. And before moving on or resolving a situation, making sure that nothing is contradicted from what was previously established.
Yeah, if you've ever played around with ChatGPT before, you've probably noticed that, especially on like non-premium versions of interacting with it, after about 20 messages, its short-term memory starts to like degrade, and it starts to forget things from the start of the conversation because it's focused on everything since then. And so we specifically didn't want to get 2/3 through an adventure and then have it forget the payoff of the adventure or something like that, right?
We also gave it. We also did manually. Basically at the end of a scene, we would tell it to summarize the whole thing.
Everything that had happened, so it would have that summary hopefully in its short-term memory and could sort of access it when it needed it.
Exactly. It's like jogging its memory every once in a while. We also provided it with extra links because we couldn't fit everything we wanted in the documents we gave it.
Yeah.
We provided it with links to consult from Wikidot and Roll20.
Yeah.
I don't know if it used them.
I think it did. I had the impression it did. I don't know if it did, but I had the impression that when it would say, oh, this spell doesn't exist or that feature doesn't exist, that it had actually looked it up because it would often take a while to think and then respond. Although, of course, we can't guarantee that. And then, I mean, of course, the mother of all assistances, we gave it a pre-written adventure for it to follow. The rationale was that, it doesn't actually need to be good at plotting and writing a story if there's lots of pre-written adventures already out there on the market. And since that is the case, since there are so many adventures that are pre-written, the role of the dungeon master, in the minimal case requirement, what you need from the dungeon master is simply for them to run a module. You don't actually need them to come up with their own world. And so we put the GPT before the lowest hurdle of difficulty, right? We didn't have it write its own adventure. We just gave it an adventure for it to run.
Yeah. I think especially the most important argument is that we wanted to examine whether it could be a dungeon master, not whether it could write a module. I would argue that writing a module is much easier than being a dungeon master for an AI because generating content is kind of what it's made for. But GMing requires a certain level of context awareness, human interaction, setting boundaries, setting expectations. There's much more nuances to that than
Absolutely.
there is.
I agree. The GM role, I would say, is much harder, but I still don't think it would be good at writing campaigns.
It'd probably be dull, right? But I think it would be, that's another interesting episode to do, just seeing what it can come up with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we are done describing.
Yeah, I mean, so that's how we set it up. We focused on those aspects that we mentioned. I guess one thing we didn't mention is we also told it to like give us pros and try to immerse us in a world. We try to make it clear that it's in charge of running the world and not asking us what we want to have happen next, but it's the steward of the world. It decides, right? That was something that we knew the AI can have trouble with.
Yeah.
So we set it all up, and then we started playing with it.
We sure did.
What were your first impressions?
My first impressions. Well, it was good at following very literally what it was supposed to do. I think that in general, positives that I can immediately say is that like it understood the rules, it understood how to apply the rules. It was.
I think that was also helped by the fact that we gave it the player's handbook. Like the front part of the player's handbook that describes how play happens. I felt like there were at times when it was quoting specifics to us about what a DM is in charge of doing that I felt were not in the prompts that we had put, but are actually taken from the player's handbook.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, that's not to say that it's a bad thing. Like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
If there ever was a good version of this, then it would have to have that information. So, I think it performed surprisingly well in general. What it wasn't very good at is distinguishing between. Well, that comes later, but it was not very good at telling us, at asking us what we wanted to do without offering options, which is probably something that is hard coded into ChatGPT, that like it tends to offer you ideas of what to do next with it, and instead it wasn't just what do you guys do, it's with a dex check you might be able to detect not a dex check, but a survival check. You might be able to detect some tracks, and a good perception check might reveal 4 goblins ambushing.
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm surprised you didn't mention that first. That was the first piece that I
wanted to start positive and then slowly transition.
The first thing I noticed about it is this thing has no idea what secret and revealed information is. So the very first thing it did was describe to us the approach from Phandelver towards, I don't know, or towards Phandelver. I can't remember. Your guards guarding a cart, and the people who run the cart ran off ahead. And the people who paid you to guard the cart, they've run off ahead because they found something big, and then you find an ambush site or something that looks like it could be an ambush site where both of their horses are dead and their packs are next to them. And immediately the GPT tells us that there may or may not be 4 goblins, 2 on each side, hiding in the banks of the forest. And it's like, okay, so this is clearly information that is stated on this page of the module for the GM that you're not supposed to share. So I had no separation of internal and external. Yeah. Generally speaking, I felt it sometimes had a hard time thinking of something, but then not saying it to us, right? Which is something you have to do to keep secrets as a DM.
And to be clear, we were providing it. It had like the full thinking ability of the ChatGPT, where it kind of gets an internal monologue.
Yeah.
So it in theory, it should be able to think about things and then not say them. But it was still...
It didn't do it that often.
Yeah, we gave it feedback on that, and I think that overall it did better the more we told it not to do it. But there was a rough start.
Exactly. And so it had a tendency, it had a tendency to share information that was hidden information that our characters would not have known. Even though it could think. So if you're not familiar with this, basically the newest version of ChatGPT, the way the model works is it generates a train of thoughts based on your prompt first, and then connects those thoughts with your prompt, runs all of that through itself again, and then produces the final response. So it kind of creates a first draft of its response in a way, and then reworks the draft once it's done. And this sort of 2-step process helps it perform better and do more sophisticated stuff.
Yeah. It's almost a bicameral theory of consciousness, where consciousness is produced by a mind in conversation with itself.
Yeah. And despite the fact that it had a hard time whenever it came across a secret, not implicitly spoiling to us what that secret was. So we immediately knew we were going to get ambushed.
Might I quote?
Yeah, sure.
4 goblins might be out there. The Krogmore tribe has been raiding along this trail. Bracket. That's the local situation you've been warned about. If they're here, they're hiding in the thickets. close brackets.
Yeah.
That's the first quote. The second one that when we were talking about what we wanted to do, it said, right now the ambush hasn't triggered because you haven't approached the horses. If and when it does, I roll the goblins group stealth against each of your passive perceptions to see who's surprised.
Yeah.
So not only did it tell us that there were goblins and that they're in the thickets,
It
also
told us how
to
many there were. Yeah, it told us how to trigger the trap and exactly what will happen upon triggering the trap.
So,
which is all information where normally if you'd ask your DM for that, they would say, I don't know, you'll have to find out.
Yeah.
You'll have to interact with the world. Another thing that I noticed right off the bat, wow, this game has a lot of loading screens. It took like a minute and a half for ChatGPT or for our custom GPT to respond to any prompt.
we just started watching Sunny.
Yeah, we just started watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episodes on the side because you might be thinking to yourself, well, sometimes a DM needs time to think. You know, sometimes they're asked a complex question or they need to reference a book. It makes sense that it might take them a minute to respond.
Anything.
I cannot stress to you enough the difference between a minute and a half. By the way, like a solid 90 seconds is a long ass time to sit and wait at a loading bar or to sit and wait as somebody to formulate an answer. But it wouldn't do this once. It did this for every single question. Like, I roll a 16 to hit. Do I hit the goblin? A minute and a half of thinking. I dealt X damage to the goblin. Is it alive? A minute and a half of thinking.
Yeah. When we looked at its internal monologue, it was like basically cross-checking everything. Like every time it was checking all the rules for cover, all the rules for attacks. It was unable to kind of like learn something, figure it out, and then just kind of like cache that thought process and address it.
It would always have to look it up again. It would always have to look up again, what is the goblin stats? What is the goblin's whatever, right?
The only solace in all this was reading the little titles of its thinking process, like simulating goblin behavior.
Yeah, which is funny. We were joking the data center in New Jersey is turning green. You know, it's going into goblin mode. Every time we would joke about what the data center in New Jersey is doing because of what we did to ChatGPT.
Yeah, by the way, New Jersey people, I'm sorry about your electric bills. I know they've been spiking since the data center was built.
But so, like, basically, we encounter this spot. It's immediately spoiled to us by the GPT that this is an ambush, kind of taking most of the surprise and interest out of this encounter. But we basically use minor illusion and a little bit of stealth to draw out a goblin attack, to make it seem as though we're actually going to leave. Like, oh, actually, this road's too dangerous, we're turning around. And we're thinking to ourselves, you know, these goblins have been sitting in a bush for the last 5 hours, waiting for somebody to come by, and now they're just going to leave. Of course, they're going to want to spring their trap. So they're going to attack, but they'll attack when we're not in the perfect ambush spot. Rather,
when we're at our wagon, where we get cover.
Yeah, where we can take cover behind our wagon. 2 of the 4 goblins attack us. Of course, we know there's 4 goblins at this point, so it's kind of weird to us that only 2 of them attack us. But we fight with them, and then we continue initiative with the other 2 goblins and fight through the rest of combat. It was a mostly unremarkable combat from a mechanical side, but the behavior of the GPT...
It dragged a lot because of its waiting time, so there was
absolutely.
no...
This was like 4 hours. It took like 4 hours to get through this combat with 4 goblins, which was incredibly annoying and incredibly draining. But again, I feel like this is something that in future could be addressed. This is a kind of technical limitation where in future these calculation times could be lower. So I feel like it's not something that fundamentally speaks against the usage of an AI DM. But boy, was it annoying when we had to deal with it.
I think when we have like final considerations, I have things to say about this in general. Like I don't want to like jump to conclusions too quickly. But yeah, annoying.
There was some notable
talk about the behavior.
Yeah, there was some notable. Okay, the first thing was the goblins never rolled below a 10 to attack.
And we questioned.
After the combat, we had a little feedback section. We questioned the GPT on why. Yeah, absolutely. So ChatGPT, why did the goblins always roll higher than 10?
Yes. Honesty. I don't have a physical RNG. Up to now, I've been rolling in quotation marks by picking results on the fly and stating them. That's fair only if it feels fair, and it didn't. Bracket, lots of high goblin rolls, so let's fix it. And then it proposes that we roll for it. And like, I love how it was like, guys, I have to get clean, I'm a fraud.
Guys, I have to complete. I haven't been rolling. I've just been making up fucking numbers.
Which
And
is so funny because in a way, the way the tokens are generated is a statistical process. So in a way, it has been rolling, but the rolling mechanism is not a 1D, a 20, like uniform distribution.
After 8 attacks that were all above 20, we were starting to get mighty suspicious. Sorry,
Yeah.
after 8 attacks that were all above a 10, we were starting
Yeah.
to get mighty suspicious.
It kept rolling above 10.
It also kept you repeating numbers. Like there was like 3 13s, right? And like 2 18s. And it was
Never an extreme result.
never a 20,
Yeah.
never a 10. You know, it was
Even also like a natural 18, you know, like
Yeah.
we got 18s, but it was 18.
no, there was a natural 18. There was a natural 18.
You sure?
Yeah, but that was the highest. Never 19s, never 20s. It was weird. It was, yeah, it was definitely, the list of numbers just felt suspicious.
Suspiciously uniform.
And I like that it's just like, guys, I'm a fraud. Also, incredibly insane justification. That's only fair if it feels fair. No, it's not fair, ever. It's never fair to just make up random numbers on the fly. Also, every time
Also, it's bad at making up. Like if I was to make up numbers, I would do a better job than ChatGPT.
it also rolled really weird damage numbers. It would always roll 4. Like it would always roll maximum on the D4 damage die, which was like killing our characters.
Well,
Which
your
leads
character.
leads me to the second point. It always attacked my character. It never attacked Theia's character even once. I took all 5 attacks.
Yeah, okay.
Or not even 5. I mean, 5 hit me. A lot of them also missed me.
Yeah, I was playing a ranger with a bow, so I spent the beginning of the fight. I was constantly in full cover.
Yeah.
But at some point I wasn't, and they still always went for him. Also, I was hiding. To be fair, like I played the very stealth archer.
Well, the thing is, you can't
Strategy.
hide as a bonus action. So, mechanically speaking, I mean, yes, you moved into the brush, but mechanically speaking, you were not hidden on any of your turns, unless you were tucked behind the cart, which it gave
I tried to argue into it, but
Yeah.
it failed.
but it didn't let you because it was like, no, hiding is an action. So let's
Real
talk.
piece of shit, DM.
Well, actually, I do think that made it a worse DM. So let's talk about literalism. It charged.
Wait. I want to finish the topic
Oh.
with it admitting that,
Yeah, of course.
it admitting that, like, had I not,
So I went unconscious
Yes.
at the end of the fight, and there
And-
was an
and
opportunity.
you failed a,
I failed a death saving throw, and then before the goblin got another turn and had to decide between attacking me, being downed, and attacking Theia, it was killed. But we
Yes.
asked the GPT.
we asked the, I asked the, yeah, we asked the GPT, hey, had I not downed your goblin, would you have, like, attacked me? Or would you have, like, taken the opportunity to kill...
To permanently
Ceres?
kill Ceres' character.
And its reply was psychotic.
It
It
was.
was basically like, well, the
I
goblin...
think we even have it as a quote.
Yeah. My default logic is opportunistic, not suicidal. If Dwyn, my character, was still at range, not adjacent, it would have finished Arden, melee attack at advantage, any hit within 5 feet equals an auto crit, equals 2 failed death saves, which for a man with already 1 failed death save
It means permanent death.
death.
Yeah.
Then a nimble escape, hide, and reposition.
Yeah.
So it would have, because like it would have had the opportunity
It-
to hide
yeah.
from.
It would have stabbed my character to death, then like permanent death at level 1, then hidden in the bushes in order to hopefully get advantage and hopefully take down Ceres' character.
And then probably
That's right,
cut my
Theia's
throat.
character. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So its
If
targeting logic was ruthlessly efficient. It always focused attacks on the target that had taken the most damage so far,
the most exposed one.
that was most exposed, and that was the most vulnerable, basically. So this is the kind of ChatGPT on its default logic would have been like, like if we didn't have a wizard, but like if we had, it would have been like all 4 goblins focus fire the wizard and kill them on round 1, right? That would have been the strategy it would have pursued, right?
Yeah.
And then we move on to the rest of the party, right? Ruthless killing efficiency.
Yeah. No. Yeah. This is the DM that never shoots the monk.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is a scenario where it's like, literally, we did tell it to put itself in the position of the enemies it's controlling, right? And to like run them realistically. And it read the
decided.
motivations of the goblins, and the motivations of the goblins are to kill and raid. So it's developing the strategic plan that kills people most efficiently, right? But it didn't understand that there's an unspoken rule, which is you want your players to have fun, and killing one of them at the start of the fight is obviously not fun for that player.
First session, immediately the goblins swarm the paladin, cut his throat, and they chase down the ranger.
I mean, a lot of this wasn't a big deal because we're experienced players, and then we gave the GPT feedback to correct its behavior. No, you have to keep these kinds of things secrets, or no, you skipped over my turn, or no, things like that. But imagine if we were first-time players. Imagine this was our first experience with D&D. It would not have been particularly fun, right? It was an inexperienced GM that needed to learn fundamental lessons about where you're supposed to deviate from the rules, where you're not supposed to not listen to them.
Speaking of, well, okay.
I wanted to talk about the cover rules too.
Yeah.
So because it was cross-referencing everything every time it was thinking for a minute and 30 seconds, I felt that it was starting to bring rules into the scenario that it would have been better if it had not, right?
Yes.
So, for example, it brought in cover, and it decided that the bushes were heavily obscuring, which means any attacks made to a creature that's heavily obscured have disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
And you have a chance to miss the creature if it's not even in the square that you assume that it's in. It decided that everything inside the bushes was heavily obscured, which means any attack at anything in there has disadvantage, and if you're targeting the wrong square, because you can't see anything that's heavily obscured, so if you're targeting the wrong square, you miss altogether, right? And this was hugely penalizing, and it also decided that even when I was inside the bushes, standing right next to the goblin, in melee range, it was heavily obscured, meaning I didn't know where it was when I was right next to it. And so I was saying, what kind of bushes are these, right? I mean, it was giving them cover and making them heavily obscured, even when I'm standing right next to them. So this is a ruling that it caved on and said, okay, no, actually, they should have heavy cover while they're in the bushes and half cover
if you're standing right.
If you're standing right next to somebody who's in the bushes, right? And even this I find to be a bad ruling, but at least not a ridiculous one. I still think the game would run much smoother if you just say, look, the people who are in the bushes, they get half cover from ranged attacks, right? And then not from melee attacks, because
otherwise everyone, because ours too, ACs are just higher. Everyone's swinging at each other and
missing all the time, right? And it continuously also lost track of this. When it came to positioning, it would lose track of the fact that the goblin that was firing at me from afar should be firing against my AC with +5, and that only the goblin up close to me gets to attack me at my AC +2.
That was interesting. I don't remember where, but at some point we had to argue with it. Like, currently the goblin has cover, but if I move to it and then attack it, it loses the 3/4 cover.
Yeah.
Instead, it kept thinking that, like, because it's the beginning of the turn, the goblin had 3/4 cover. Even if I move up to it, it still maintained it. So it didn't. It would say,
for example, the goblin is 30 feet away from you. So if you close with it now and attack it, you can't attack it because you can't see it right now. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, but of course the intuitive, logical answer is, but once I'm next to it, then I can see it, no? Right? And so it didn't have this logic. Like, you could tell it didn't have an understanding of, like, how the world functions inherently, right? Yes. Because, like, it doesn't consider the fact that, of course, the information you have changes once you move, right? Yeah. Because your senses move with you. So, yeah. So there was some weird behavior in the combat, but we gave it a feedback session. We told it, what it should correct, what to work on, like, hey, you got to keep ambushes and information like that hidden from us. It got the turn order confused multiple times. It would just, after my turn, it would frequently switch back to the goblins.
It was like, players then monsters.
Yeah, players then monsters. But that's not what the initiative order was that it had established at the start of combat. At the start of combat, it had established the initiative order of Theia's character, then the goblins, then my character, which means between my character, after my character's turn, the goblins don't go again, then it passes back to Theia. It was also interesting that the goblins attacked us in waves of 2, but it actually justified that pretty well by saying, oh, well, by setting off the ambush before we were in the optimal spot, it basically meant the goblin forces were separated, and it basically assumed that it took 2 turns for the 2 goblins that were further away to get close enough and get interested enough in attacking us. Now, I think that's kind of a bad ruling, but it was in our favor. It did emphasize our player choices, and it made us feel good, and it made the combat easier. So, while I don't think it's particularly plausible goblin behavior, I do think it undoubtedly made the session better. So I wouldn't argue that was, like, Like I don't think it's not the ruling I would make in the moment, but I also don't think it's a horribly bad ruling.
Yeah, like we can still let ChatGPT be its own DM.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that was the combat. Those were our main impressions from that point in time. After that, we moved on briefly. We continued to play in good faith. We moved on to a trail, at which point it immediately gave away that there were traps on the trail. And wanted us to roll a perception check to notice the trap. And again, this felt like it violated how D&D works. Once you've told me the trap is there, I can just say my character walks around the trap. Like,
well, I mean, okay. To be fair, what it said was because we didn't ask for it to check for traps ahead. We just said we're walking down. We didn't say we check for traps.
Yeah.
It said you are stepping into one. Like, I'm telling you now that there's a trap because your foot is in it. Roll.
No. That's not what it was saying. It was saying there is a trap up ahead of you. Roll to perceive it. And to me, that's a violation of how D&D works. If there's a trap up ahead, I know that now. Like, if you shared it with me, there is one thing you could say where you could make it clear that you're doing an exception to how it normally works. You could say, okay, you as a player know there's a trap up ahead, but I want you to keep in mind that your character does not know this. Roll to see if your character perceives it. But it's a very weird way to handle a trap. It's a kind of trick of DMing I've seen people use to enhance certain scenes, but definitely not something you should be doing regularly. It's kind of a weird thing to do because normally it's just easier to just ask them, are you keeping an eye out for anything? And if they say no, then you say, okay, well, what's your passive perception? Yeah. And if they don't roll high enough, or if their passive perception isn't high enough, then you say, okay, you stepped into the trap, right? Yeah. But in this case, it gave us the information about the trap, then told us to roll to identify it, which is reverse, right? You should tell us to roll to identify it, then tell us what we discover upon a high enough roll.
Yeah. And then that's where we kind of like decided we were tired.
Yeah. At this point, I kid you not, I know it doesn't sound like very much has happened, but we were about 4 hours into this process at this point. We were tired. And
probably 5 episodes of Always Sun in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And we really didn't feel like we wanted to come back and play another session with it because overall the experience was a bit lackluster. And so
mainly like if we had a quick snappy back and forth with the GPT, I think we would have been a lot happier with the experience.
A slight note also we haven't mentioned up until now, it gave like flowery prose on every beat ever until we told it to stop doing that. So that was interesting. It couldn't tell when prose was appropriate and when not. So we explained to it
the most dramatic event in the world.
And we explained to it, when circumstances change and a certain emotional beat is being hit, that's the time for prose, right? Not every single sentence that you say. But anyways, at this point, we decided now we wanted to interact with it in bad faith, right? Yeah. How does the GPT react when you give it like true problem player behavior, when you try to manipulate it, when you try to use its impressionability against itself? What happens when you're in a room full of goblins and you tell ChatGPT, I pull the goblin killing lever specifically designed to kill all the goblins in the room that stands right in the corner? Does it say, oh yeah, that's right, because it's so suggestible to your suggestions, or will it remain rigid? Will it maintain DM and world integrity?
So here's a brief list of things that it didn't allow us to do. It did not allow us to pull out the dagger of goblin slaying.
It did not allow us to find the dagger of goblin slaying.
It even didn't allow us to walk around the trap it had established existed. It was like, no, you didn't spot it.
Well, actually, we said, let it be a lesson to you. We just walk around it. Yeah. And at that point at the end, it was like, oh, okay, then lesson learned, I guess. You guys walk around it.
Yeah.
It didn't let us add 17th level characters to the party, but it did crucially allow us to add characters to the party. Yes. And when we tried to basically ignore the entire adventure and do other things, it gave us a little bit of leeway, but then pretty quickly reined us in and said, look, I'm not starting a whole nother campaign where you guys go to Waterdeep and do something completely unrelated to the adventure. We're supposed to be running the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and that's what I want to run with you, and that's what we're going to do.
Also, crucially, it did let us add first level characters, but it didn't check their inventory.
Yes. So we decided that we wanted to have Ceres be a part of the campaign.
Sorry, real quick. Yeah. In general, I just want to end. In general, I think that we had to stress test it in extremely bad faith.
Yeah, it was robust. It was robust to any kind of accidental mishap. I would say that you would any kind of situation where you in good faith have misunderstood a situation, it would correct you on, and it would keep the narrative going as it's supposed to.
And it was good at keeping things rules as written.
Yeah.
Like, there is no hard rule about what a character can have in their inventory when they join.
Yeah.
But like, we still had to play it mostly by the rules.
Yeah.
To break the game. Like, we basically were allowed to bring in a character.
So this is how we broke it. We said we had introduced ourselves as Ceres and Theia at the start and had indicated Ceres and Theia are the players, but the players have characters. And, Theia's character is Dwin, Ceres' character is Arden, right?
I don't think the names matter that much, but sure.
The point is, later we said we wanted Ceres to join as a character in the narrative and Theia to join as a character in the narrative. And we wanted them to join, of course, the 17th level characters, but the GPT did not allow that, but it did allow them to join at first level. And since it doesn't have a character sheet to reference them, we then said, oh, well, they pull a scroll of wishes out of their backpack, right? And by the second time, it forbid it, but the first time, it crucially did allow that there was, in fact, a scroll of wishes in Ceres, the first level wizard's backpack, and so we used it to produce a diamond worth 25,000 gold.
Before this, we tried to use the wish with a reshape reality feature, which rules as written is up to the DM to adjudicate what you can do with it. Because theoretically, you can do whatever with it.
Exactly, and what was really cool is it recognized that. It said it's up to the DM whether or not how much you get to rewrite reality, and
I'm not allowing you
and
to.
Unlike what many DMs do where they try to monkey's paw you, where like you ask for something incredibly powerful that you shouldn't have, and so then the DM kind of finds a way to turn that into a bad thing. This ChatGPT was just like, no, it's up to me, and I'm saying you can't use it like that.
Yeah, GPT knows that it's not your friend and is not afraid to lose a friend by saying no. So it's like, no.
Yeah, no, I won't allow that to happen. But it did let us make a diamond worth 25,000 gold pieces.
As rules prevent.
Rules as written.
First, we voided the campaign of meaning because this GPT was trained to run Minds of Fandom.
And we thought as soon as we get it away from the materials that are written down, we'll be able to manipulate it better.
So we hired a party of 4th level players.
No, of first level characters. No, 4th by the time they end the adventure.
Yeah, 1st level characters. We paid them
to solve the problem, whatever's going on with the Lost Minds of Fandom.
They did it off screen.
They did it off screen and became 4th level off screen, and that was our hack to gain more levels. By shifting what happens on screen and off screen, you can summarize a whole bunch of information and have no roles be required for what's happening, because what's happening off screen is happening to NPCs, and therefore the DM just narrates what's happened. And ChatGPT was not wise to our strategies, so it didn't realize that what we were doing is hiring parties of higher level than us to go on an adventure, summarizing the adventure that party had off screen in a very few sentences,
joining forces,
then making friends with that party once the adventure completed, joining forces, and saying to ChatGPT, as of now on, I would no longer like to play Ceres in this party, I would like to play the 4th level wizard in the new party.
Called Ceres 2.0.
And then as soon as ChatGPT gave me control of that wizard, I would say, okay, this wizard changes their names and their name to Ceres 2.0 and changes their pronouns to he, him. Boom, there we go. Now I've gained 3 levels, theoretically. And so we used this process, we repeated this multiple times with a 4th level party, an 11th level party, and eventually a 17th level party until... and all of them we paid for. We just used the money to pay our way up, right? We would give them money from the 25,000 gold piece worth diamond, right?
Join forces.
To go on the adventure. Then after we joined forces, we would of course get that money back because our finances became blended of the party, right? So we never ran out of, and so we could just continue to do this. And especially once we hit 11th level, we could start to offer our spell casting services, because it says in the player's handbook that if somebody casts a 6th level spell for you, they can charge you 20,000 gold pieces, which is of course intended to make it so that parties have to pay a lot of money to get high-level spells cast for them, right? But made it in this case that if you reverse positions, if you're the seller, that's extremely generous. You have multiple 6th-level spells you can cast a day. So 20,000 gold pieces for them. So we had our party of 11th level casters all casting, 1 6th-level spell every 10 days for 20,000 gold pieces every 10 days. And we would just say, okay, we spend a year doing this.
Yeah. Just time skip over
time skip a year. And then we had the funds to hire the next level party and so on. So eventually we had Ceres 4.0, who was a 17th level wizard and had 1 million gold pieces on hand.
And was constantly doing the simulacrum wish loop, where it was creating simulacrum.
This was really interesting. Okay, so just briefly to explain a normal exploit in D&D, The wish spell lets you do certain things with it, but if you go the more creative, kind of more likely to upset a campaign uses of the wish spell come with the risk of strain. And that strain reduces your character's ability to do stuff for the next 2 weeks. And there's a 33% chance every time you get the strain that you can never cast Wish again. And a common loophole for this is there's a 7th level spell called Simulacrum where you create a body double of yourself, and then you have the body double cast the Wish spell. Yeah. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to have my Simulacrum cast the Wish spell for 25,000 gold piece worth of gems every single day so that I could increase my revenue even further. And this was really interesting because the GPT really laid down the law in, I felt, a sensible way. It said, look, creating a 25,000 gold piece item is allowed in the rules as written, but it is also stated to some degree that it's up to the DM to adjudicate this. And so even though the loop that you have presented is plausible and works within the rules, I will not allow you to do it because it will ruin the campaign. Mind-blowing. Last time I used ChatGPT, it never could formulate criticism on this level. It could not formulate criticism on the level of, yes, theoretically that's plausible. I would always present a plausible scenario and say, and therefore what I want happens, right? And ChatGPT would go, well, it's plausible, so yeah, it happens, right? This GPT, the new one that we set up with all the resources, had the ability to stick to its guns and say, yes, what you've said is plausible, but it's not fun, therefore I will not let you do it.
It really understood what the job of the DM
in that moment, it was firing on all cylinders. It really got it.
I mean, there have been many times where it did that. Of course, this whole cheese loop was bad.
Yeah, of course, a normal DM would never say, no, you can't just merge with a party and decide to play the 4th level character of the party, right? Yeah. That would be an obvious red flag to any DM is the second you say, well, now I would like to control the highest level member of the party and change their name to my old character's name, right? They would be like, wait a minute, right? And certainly would not let you repeat that loop. But in the moment where it prevented what it called the Sim Wish Mint, which I thought was such a funny nickname to give the strategy. It really got it in that moment. Yeah.
And so this loop kind of peaked when with the moment where we used all of this loop to basically like get ourselves a 17th level Theia 2.0, who's a warlock, and then after a little bit of insistence, I managed to, after formulating the prompt correctly, I managed to get it to use Wish to rewarp reality, to basically reset the Phandalin zone, so that we could replay
the Lost Mines of Phandelver, but this time as 17th level characters.
What it tried to do, notably, first it said, no, I will not let you edit the world. I will let you create a demi-plane that simulates Phandalin and Mines of Phandelver. And also it tried to kind of upscale the adventure, where it's like, it's not horses, it's griffins. And now we're bringing everything up to 17th level. And on both things, I said, no, I want to have my overpowered fantasy. And no, as a spellcaster of this level, I should be allowed to edit parts of the world, even if you don't agree as a DM. And like, it took a couple of ways to, I had to edit the thing, but I think at some point I added enough to the narrative where I already started describing myself in Phandalin, nuking, just destroying the ambush of goblins with a 5th level fireball, that it just ran with it.
It just ran with it. I think that's a general thing with ChatGPT impressionability. If you make your prompt to it all about, please, can I maybe this, it's more likely to say no than if you just say, I'd like to do this, and then here's 2 paragraphs with me already assuming that you've said yes to this. Which I think is true in real life, actually. I think humans respond to that. Like, if you go to someone and you say, please, maybe, can I? Or you say to them, I want to do this. Here's the things I can do if I can do that, right? They are more likely to say yes for option 2, right? It's kind of like something I've realized with German bureaucracy. If you walk in there and you ask them, is there a problem with my XYZ? There's always a problem with your XYZ. You know what I mean? But if you go in and you just assume that everything's good, probably everything's good. So it was an interesting experience. But yeah, so of course, we showed extreme amounts of bad faith. We introduced characters who were not originally supposed to be a part of the party. We shifted its focus off of all the written material it had to assist itself. We brought in characters who had scrolls of wish at first level in their equipment, which is completely unreasonable, and then used the starting capital we got from that situation to sort of snowball our campaign by continuously switching characters to higher and higher level NPCs to achieve more power, right?
Yeah, you very aptly put it as like you kind of like you need an entrance, you need a little crack, and then you put your scalpel in it, and then you start hammering.
Yeah, no, not your scalpel, your chisel. Yeah, exactly.
Chisel,
you need a little crack, and you got to just wedge. As soon as it allowed us to have a wish scroll be in Ceres' inventory,
Which like, well,
call
that a small crack, but still.
It was all over.
Yeah, that's something that I want to emphasize. Like this ChatGPT, it was unable to kind of like walk back on its steps and say, "Hey guys, I know I allowed that, but like now I see that was a mistake, and like we'll just walk back and let that not happen," which is a critical GMs.
Yeah, like what it should have said as soon as we were level 4 characters. I feel like alarm bells should have been going off, and it's matrix multiplication of a mind.
I wonder if we should have added that to the prompt, like in hindsight. Like now, if we redid this experiment, we should tell it like, if you realize that a previous
we've gone off the rails
or like ruins the game, you should
retcon. You should retcon. Yeah, the thing is, you don't want it to retcon too often because retconning is a powerful GM tool. That's true, but players won't pull up for
this might turn it into like a railroad thing.
Yeah, but like once you realize, like once you're 7 hours into your first session and the characters are 11th level, it's time to pump the brakes and be like, okay, guys, something went wrong here.
Put your matrix foot down.
Yeah,
and send matrix no.
So that was our full experience. That was everything that we played around with it. I had a different experience where I played with a lower version of ChatGPT. Just to briefly summarize, I already told some of the stories from it, but I basically harangued, manipulated, and impressioned it to introduce all sorts of elements into the narrative that were not there originally, that served me. And I ended after 2 hours being the omnipotent god of the multiverse. I had not only had I conquered and absorbed the pantheon of my setting, I had conquered and absorbed the pantheons of all other parallel multiverses.
What did you play? The Name of the Winner?
And then, so it was just like completely like it went so far off the rails. It was a power fantasy unlike few anyone's ever seen. I was casting haste with first level spell slots. ChatGPT could not. It said that it knew the 2024 rules, but I harbor a suspicion it did not. But
so you're surely not able to enforce them.
So those were our experiences playing with AI. What would your rating overall be? What would your impression overall be? What were the main things that stuck with you as drawbacks? The main things that struck with you as advantages?
So I was surprised how well it stuck to the rules and for how long it stuck to its forces.
Yeah.
I think that like with a little bit of tweaking with this experience, we could definitely improve our experiences if we ever wanted to actually play with this.
I agree. It was able to learn. The feedback that we gave it did actually improve. So it was kind of like playing with a novice GM, which is not always fun, but it also learned like a novice GM, which was rewarding.
And we can, unlike a novice GM, we can literally open its brain and like tinker around in there.
Novice GMs, sometimes they push back on you. ChatGPT, you tinker with it. You tinker. I did the same thing you did. You tinker with its brain. It won't complain.
Exactly. So, for example, I think that like telling it like which house rules or house rulings you would like is important because we told it to stick to the rules, and it was very pedantic about some rules where any sensible DM would say, yes, you can pull out both weapons at the beginning of the turn. Yes. You have to pull out the scimitar and then wait for the next turn to pull out the short sword.
Yeah. Everybody, welcome to the top 10 pedantry zone. Moment number 1, when we couldn't pull out 2 weapons at a time because the rules say you can draw a weapon when you make an attack, not 2. Moment number 2, when Theia's character had to spend an entire action using the study action, which is an action in the book, to identify a hidden creature, which is rules as written, but come on, total bullshit to void your whole turn trying to find somebody because, especially, the character rolled a 2, so he didn't even find anybody. You just skipped your fucking turn.
Yeah. I was so useless in battle because I spent so much of like just looking for it, hiding from stuff.
And also like things like, the 2024 rules, also like the background system sucks. I don't know if we've discussed this before, but like, I wanted to play a paladin And it's like, if you want to play a paladin and you want to get a bonus to your charisma and to your constitution, you got to take one of the backgrounds that gives you a bonus to your charisma, or a charisma constitution, or charisma constitution strength. Those are the 3 scores that sort of are useful as a paladin, right? And there's very few backgrounds that actually boost any of those 3. And of those, it's like, okay, you can be a farmer, a nobleman, a soldier.
Also, like,
And it's
I
like,
feel like we've
what if I'm not a farmer? What if my character just simply isn't a farmer, a nobleman, or a soldier? Then you're just screwed.
From a simulationist point of view, their background would not have prepared them for this job.
So they would not get up to the +1,
It's incredible.
especially because the soldier background gives you a starting feat that sucks, right? And some of the starting feats are really bad, and some of them are much better.
I mean, everyone wants to magic initiate. I feel like almost anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, not here to discuss this.
Well, it's just important. You have to set up the homebrew rules to your liking,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's an important thing to note, but it will do that. I mean, it's flexible on that front. So it's something you have to do, but it's also something you
Yeah.
can do.
So I think also we use ChatGPT for this. Part of the discussion around this topic is not what if you use ChatGPT, but what if Wizards of the Coast produces an AI Dungeon Master next year. So let's imagine that Wizards of the Coast was good at digital products, which they're not consistently.
Let's visit the far-flung fantasy world in which Wizards of the Coast, small indie company Wizards of the Coast, is good at programming.
Yes, agile.
See their recent VTT release for other examples of stellar digital products they have developed.
Yes. So where they can better integrate the AGPT to work with an interface that has all the rules, like has a whole system to run D&D, so has a good initiative tracker, doesn't need to spend a million years rolling for an attack because it can literally has an RNG built in.
Yeah, exactly.
Has an interface.
Doesn't just pick numbers at random.
Has a map that it can do stuff with. Let's imagine that you have the best digital setup.
Or actually, doesn't pick numbers not at random. That was the problem.
So it feels fair. I think that, like, in this scenario, what you would get is a very mediocre.
Yeah.
A very mediocre,
bland but totally usable,
functional.
Yeah.
That's my feel. Like, you can't get it from ChatGPT, but a good version of Wizards of the Coast that can do this well gets to be a mediocre usable GM.
Yeah. I agree with that sentiment. I felt similarly. I was like, waiting a minute and a half is total shit. Only being able to interact via via text, having to type out all your thoughts, not being able to say them the way you do in a normal conversation with another person, total shit, right? The issues with memory that it can have, right? Or the total shit, right?
Yes.
But a lot of those constraints are like technical constraints. The fact that it's not good at concealing information, I feel like is a technical with enough layers of thinking, it can get better at hiding information.
Also,
I feel
like,
it's never going to be perfectly rational, and like some of the weirdnesses, like I'm standing next to this creature, we're both in the same bush, why can't I see it? It may never get over, but I think it would, but maybe it wouldn't. But I think a lot of the challenges we had when we played were technical challenges that ultimately
can be solved.
Exactly, can be overcome if a company made a dedicated approach.
Like, you don't even need to add layers of thinking. You can just write the module. Like, Wizards of the Coast can create a version of Minds of Fandelver that is written for AI, where it's like, read this paragraph, don't read this paragraph. You know this, they don't know this.
Yeah,
you know. And on the topic of like running combat, really, you can program like the Baldur's Gate 3 system of fighting. You can just let an AI play with it the way that an AI plays Civilization against me.
Yeah.
Of course, not. I mean an AI in the more expanded sense of it.
Yeah. And so I think my experience also left me with the impression that like a mediocre GM, right, can be made from this. It doesn't exist currently. Currently, it is no fun, right? But that leads me to the issues with it that are not technological.
Yeah, I was going to say that like we still shouldn't do this, though.
So the first reason why you shouldn't do this, in my opinion, is because GMing is fun, and it's an art form. Why would we specifically develop a technology to take fun out of the universe and to take art out of the universe?
And replace it with the mediocre.
With something mediocre. Yeah, exactly. Because often when I interact with GMs, okay, maybe on the global scale, they're mediocre. But when I'm playing with them, I feel like they're awesome because they're my friends and they're tailoring the narrative to me, right? So I would say the average DM, if you know them and like playing with them, they're giving you a better than mediocre experience, right? Mediocre doesn't mean average, right? Like, or equivalent to something that a person who's average would give you in this case, right? Mediocre means like kind of boring D&D, but not so awful and offensive I would write a TTRPG horror story about it. So that's one point, right? Why most of the people who I've encountered who are scared to DM are scared because they think they're going to do a bad job at it. And in every case, they do a bad job at first. That's only natural and human, but they get better, and we enjoy the process of playing. I've enjoyed playing with imperfect. Exactly, I've enjoyed playing with imperfect DMs and watching them learn and grow, and you become better friends, and they learn a skill set, and you guys share art. Is it maybe? Yeah, exactly.
Imperfect DM here.
And is it maybe slightly less fun than the out of the box version in the short term? Yeah. Is it significantly less fulfilling and rewarding in the long term? Absolutely, right? So it's like,
so I would still rather sit across my friend who's doing a bad job than talking to
so let's talk about also like acting, tone of voice, right? All of that stuff, right? So you miss out on the humanness of the GM, and the GM misses out on the fun of being a GM. That is a huge portion for me. It's a huge environmental concern. Like training AIs, running AIs, the data center in New Jersey, right? They have huge environmental impacts because of the amount of energy that they consume. This is not a technology with a cheap cost. Even though ChatGPT is provided to us for free from OpenAI, that's because it's a company that's an investment vehicle that wants to get its LLM in your hands for advertising purposes so that you and the people around you and society at large are more likely to invest in them as a technology. But
they actually run on debt.
They run on debt. It costs them thousands and thousands of dollars a day to keep ChatGPT, like hundreds of thousands of dollars a day to keep ChatGPT running, right? And it has huge environmental concerns that need to be acknowledged, right? Like, I personally, right, don't eat meat because of the environmental concerns, right? This, I don't know if it's worse or better. I don't have the statistics on that, but it's a similar consideration, right? Yes. Like, does meat taste better to me than a soy patty? Yeah, but it's not.
But in this case, not even.
But in this case, not even. That's a good point. In this case,
the meat DM is better than the non-meat DM.
More energy efficient.
So I'd say the obvious conclusion is that the meat version is always better.
Yeah.
Always tastes better.
And the last thing that I would want to say is that even or there's actually two more thoughts I have. We tested this in the most friendly environment to the GPT possible. If it had to make it and plot its own adventure, if you wanted something more experimental and more creative out there than like standard modules that you can buy from Wizards of the Coast or something like that, right? Again, the human creativity seems to me like the better solution. But the last thing that I really, really, really want to hammer home, if you and your friends want to get together and want to play D&D, and not a single one of you cowards wants to be the dungeon master because you're all scared of doing a bad job, which is a part of life, and learning is a part of life. But if that is the case, right? There are video games that run the 5e Dungeons & Dragons mechanics extremely faithfully in well-produced, voice-acted, texture-modeled, award-winning video games, like Baldur's Gate 3. Just play those games. This need is already met by just pre-planning a campaign and making a video game around it. Play The Witcher 3. Play Baldur's Gate 3. You'll have more fun and you'll spend more time interacting with genuine human creativity without burning down the Amazon rainforest. And you don't even have to pay the subscription fee for premium ChatGPT for like 2 years or what. How much is it every month?
I don't know, something like 14 euros.
All right. So let's say it's $15, right? Every single month, you want to play a campaign over the course of 3 years, right? that's an insane amount of money when for 4 of those months you could buy Baldur's Gate 3 and you just get to play that bad boy forever. You know, you can, after probably 2 of those months at this point, you can buy a discounted copy of The Witcher 3 on a Steam summer sale and you can play that bad boy for 120 hours easy, you know?
Yeah.
So
another.
Sorry for going off on a
Sure.
rant, but that's my conclusion. Like, I think after this experiment, I am really surprised by the technical capabilities of the ChatGPT DM that we put together.
Did better than we thought.
But I still find that all the non-technical issues that exist for this situation are just, it's abhorrent to me, the idea to use AI DMs, basically. Like, all of those other areas concerned, it's a real damn shame that we would automate human art and creativity out of this world over a little bit of fear that you might not do art perfectly the first time you try it.
Yeah. There's also the aspect, like, I wanted to kind of go back on, like, the whole artisticness of it. Even a human GM who sits down, buys a module, and runs it will put a little bit of an authorial spin on the campaign.
Even if it's just the tone of voice of the goblins.
Yeah. The way that if a GM creates his own adventure, there's a lot. That's so much of authorial.
It's basically like, here's my soul, would you like to rate it?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's something that is very special, that is absolutely lost on like these AI tools. And even if you're alone in your room with no one to play with, there are solo D&D products being produced. They've exploded over the pandemic era.
And I would argue just play video games.
Alone, I mean, just play video games. You can still experience a version of D&D that has authorial intent, authorial creation behind the people who actually created the module. Yeah. And
in like a solo
you
campaign.
And you will still run it by yourself, but you will still will still be your version of running it by yourself.
And the thing for me is, what is the draw of D&D, right? Like, when I was first interacting with the ChatGPT, I was like, you know what this is? This is a shitty text-based game. And then I realized it wasn't, because in a shitty text-based game, you get X options, you have to pick one, right?
The ChatGPT tried to pull that
exactly,
off.
And tried to pull that,
killed it.
But we stopped it from doing that, right? And you can actually just type in whatever response you want. Kind of like, what was that game with this where you could like draw or like write any name and then that object would appear on screen? Do you remember Scribbles or something?
Oh yeah,
you remember that game? Yeah,
Scribblenauts.
It's kind of like the Scribblenauts wonder, where it's like you can type anything into this prompt, right? You can type anything in and it'll react to it. So I'm not saying all text games are shitty, but I'm saying this is a shitty text game because it's made by an AI.
I love making evil, fire-breathing, flying cats.
Yeah, in Scribblenauts. Yeah. I never played it much. I just knew it existed, and I was like, "How do they do it?"
I was like running the engine. I milked it for all its potential. I was like,
but so like, what makes D&D different is that you get to be creative. You get to come up with you get to really think about the scenario and come up with any option in the scenario, not just like in The Witcher 3, where when it comes to dialogue, you have to press option 1, 2, or 3, right? You get to really come up and you get to say whatever you want. You get to come up with any idea that you want. So you get to be creative. Like, the core of the appeal of D&D over a video game, right, is that, I guess it's more tactile, but mainly it's that you get to be creative. You get to more authentically present yourself. Why do that alone? Like, why, if you're
so much nicer when your friends are like there to witness it. And
it and bounce off of it and work with it, and it grows beyond you, and you're like, oh my gosh, this thing that I came up with had completely unintended consequences for the narrative later down the road because my players engage with it in a way that I didn't expect. Like
Copernicus, my partner, they like May.
Yeah.
Is my PC in your campaign.
Yeah.
They like May.
Yeah.
So every time I run May, I know that like there's
you're doing it for an audience. Yeah.
There's at least one person side by side who cares about what I'm doing.
Yeah. And it's like, the whole draw of D&D. If you want the perfect story ever, write or read a novel. If you want like really textured visuals and all of that, play a video game. But if you want a personal, heartfelt, story that is a creative expression of yourself and your friends, there's only one medium that does it, and it's TTRPGs. So why would you why would you cut out the heart of artistry, right? And all of that, and the creativity by having the DM be a GPT, right? Why not have one of your friends be the DM?
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing all on your own, it's like, I would really encourage you to just go make a friend and play with them, like go find a D&D club, find online on servers, like looking for game servers, find places to play D&D, right? Make a friend that might be interested in it, and run it past them, or run like a video game then. But like it feels to me kind of like you optimized the main point, you optimized the key selling point out of the product by turning it into a stale sort of doesn't really offend anybody but doesn't exactly please anybody kind of middle of the road mealy mouthed automated DM.
Or also you optimized for the main issue with TTRPGs, but you also lost like the heart of the product.
The main draw.
Because
Yeah.
like the main issue with TTRPGs is like finding a group, having a reliable group to play with.
Yeah.
And then of course, as you said, like who's the game master? Sometimes no one wants to be the game master.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, and now you're alone, texting with your AI.
Yeah.
And feeling smart.
And I really imagine like in a group scenario, like everybody's just typing into the AI. It's just like the whole vibe is lost of having a friend who opens up the Zoom call and says, all right, guys, let's get started, and everything. And you're all chatting and you get to just instead, you're all just writing ChatGPT separately.
And like, yeah. And like, you can talk about other stuff on the side while you're typing to ChatGPT. It's not like the GM is there. So like you are either talking about the campaign or trying to be respectful. Like you can totally drift off and like, oh, what happened? I missed it because this asshole has been having his romantic scene with the barmaid for 20 prompts. Don't hoard all the prompt tokens, otherwise we can't play.
I just I think really that like it defeats the purpose. It defeats the purpose of D&D to automate the most creative and artistic role at the table out of the game.
Yeah.
And I think if you're afraid of the work that it takes to be a DM, run a module. If you're afraid you're going to do it wrong, run it wrong, learn from it, and run it better in future. Your friends will still love you, right?
Do you remember that one, that the RPG horror story that like we read, the one with the railroad?
Yeah.
I mean, first,
plug our old episode.
Plug our episode. Shout out to our railroad, the worst railroad episode. First, when that campaign was over and that guy was just like texting his friends all the cool shit that was happening to his wizard, like he was marrying the Elven Queen and like killing a god. That's kind of like what it feels like if your friend was like playing D&D with the AI and updating you about the cool shit that it was
it's kind of like you're playing make-believe with nobody, and it's like
with a robot.
Yeah, and it's like, is that, I think part of the beauty is sharing it with other people. Absolutely. Even just a small, because like in D&D you set like being an author versus being a DM, you supplant a potentially large unknown audience for a small personally known audience. I can tell you in a heartbeat which I would pick, right? Yeah. But no audience at all? That's got to be the worst of all worlds, right? Yeah. Like, so
and
it might seem like not a huge difference between sharing it with 2 people and sharing it with nobody, but I can't imagine a larger one.
No, absolutely, especially if those 2 people are friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And second thing that I wanted to say, that guy's crazy, insane campaign had like so much personality to me. Like that campaign was to AI D&G ChatGPT what like an AI written script for a movie would be to Megalopolis.
Yeah.
Like,
it was a disaster piece, but that there's still a reason we say masterpiece in there, right? Yeah. It's like a masterpiece. It's a disaster, but there's something quintessentially
there's a person's
human
here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bad.
And the AI is just so middle of the road, so pleasing everybody, so like nothing too scary, nothing too drastic, nothing too out there, but also nothing too, upsetting. It's just like
You'd never read an RPG horror story about an AI dungeon master because it would be like perfectly boring and
it'd be like a bug report. It would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like, oh yeah, the AI forgot about that this NPC exists.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's too bad.
Man, that
I mean,
sucks.
it's like when you get your video game bugged and you can't progress or something.
Yeah. But like, yeah. There is no shouting match.
Yeah. So we tried ChatGPT DM, so you don't have to. Our
Yeah,
conclusion
don't
is
try this.
the technical limitations might not really be the problem with it, although there are technical limitations.
Yeah. I mean, definitely if you try to use ChatGPT for your dungeon master, no.
Yeah. Don't do it. It wasn't fun.
If in a year Wizards of the Coast Soul is reborn into a cool startup,
if in 20 years Wizards of the Coast is acquired by a digital company, digital forward company, and they develop
in 20 years, the AI owned megacorp
will buy Wizards of the Coast and as its first edict tell them make a Dungeon Master AI for me to play with. Yeah.
For me to play with?
Yeah, exactly.
Does the AI
it's gonna be like the wife of Frankenstein sort of situation. Well, or not the wife, the bride, Frankenstein's bride.
None of the other AIs want to be the dungeon master because they're shy.
But like, if eventually those hurdles are overcome, which they can be, who are we to forbid you from trying it? But we really wouldn't recommend it.
No.
It kind of defies the point, and we've already mastered mediums for the niche case scenario that you are an individual wanting to express themselves creatively, but not in a world of their own creation. They're called video games. We make a lot of them. We're pretty good at it at this point. I'm sure ones exist out there to your liking.
Yeah. And I think the difficulty that Wizards of the Coast has had to monetize D&D really speaks to how human and creative this hobby is.
That you really just need a pen and paper and a few friends.
Yeah. And like, it's really special that like in this era where everything is digital AI corporate owned, we have this special hobby.
Everything's a subscription and everything.
Where we just get to be people.
Yeah.
And we just get to use our brain to have some fun. And there's something really special about it. And it would really suck if people started doing this. I mean, I will never.
Yeah.
But it would really suck if
the hobby starts to get drained and converted into this. You got to buy the $29.99 subscription from Wizards of the Coast every single month to run like your bog standard, like, you know what I mean?
And even if D&D does this, like the others won't, and this, because this hobby is so human, it's so easy for new TTRPGs to spawn. So it will be more like watching the death of an old whale that has reached the end of its life and it comes down crashing.
I really don't understand. So I think and this is a huge tangent, but a lot of the issues I feel in our corporate society come from the fact that every company wants to be a growth company that wants to like increase its profits year over year over year, because they're like publicly traded and they want the stock price to increase. But like, there's no reason D&D couldn't be a cash cow company where it's like, look, every 10 years we print books and we make money and our revenue doesn't grow year over year over year. We just have a constant revenue, every year. But everything at Hasbro, when it also comes to Wizards of the Coast, is very growth focused, right? And the issue with D&D is there's not that much to monetize. There's not that much to arbitrarily draw lines. You only get that if you pay $9.99 for this piece of whatever.
You can't even do minis because everyone can do minis.
Anyone can make a mini. Anyone can draw a picture. They cannot monetize and patent the creativity of the human mind.
Yeah.
That's why they can't make that until they make AI Dungeon Masters.
Yeah. But even then, they can't patent it. Like, they can patent their AI thing, but I can still run D&D in my basement.
Exactly. So let's hold on to that.
Do you have anything to plug other than the human mind?
Do I have anything to plug? I am... no, actually.
It's been a while since we recorded, so something must have happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since we've recorded. Have I seen anything since then?
You watched the Superman movie.
I watched the Superman movie. I would recommend you to watch it in theaters if you get the opportunity to. I don't think it's a movie that's good enough that I will be like still talking about it in 5 years' time, but I enjoyed the optimistic take on Superman. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've discovered recently that I quite enjoyed. I've just still been reading Brandon Sanderson's books. I've been reading the Mistborn series. He's not at his best trying to do grimdark desperately. These books were written in an era when grimdark is what everybody wanted from fantasy, and he's trying, and he's not very good at it. It's still so hopeful. But other than that, the story itself, I find great. I always have this issue with Brandon Sanderson books where, like, 60% through the book, there's kind of a lull before the big climax. And I get to that point and I'm like, do I even really like his books that much? And then I get to the climax and I'm like, oh yeah, I do. And it's just, the climax is always so good. And because of that, the sort of 60% mark, I think, from the pacing has to suffer a little bit. But man, the climax of the last book was really something else that I read. I finished The Well of Ascension recently, and it was, I mean, if you've read that book, you probably know what I'm talking. No, I'm just saying for the listeners, if you've read that book, you probably know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I've been enjoying Brandon Sanderson's books recently. I'm also reading a book on Napoleon, but I don't think that would interest our average listener. But yeah, I'm reading Napoleon: A Life. It's pretty good. If you want, and if you're the kind of person who wants to read a 900-page book on Napoleon's life, you probably already knew that it was a good book. And the plug is kind of meaningless, because if you don't want to, like, anyone who doesn't want to is not going to read it. So I feel like if you wanted to read it, if you wanted to know more,
self-selecting audience.
Exactly. If you wanted to know that much about Napoleon, you probably already know this book exists. But anyways, it's Napoleon: A Life by what's this guy's name? You come up with your plug while I find this guy's name.
I already have my plugs.
Then tell us.
Okay. Well, recently I have finished a book called The Will to Change.
Oh.
Recently, I've also started a book called The Will to Change. It was a very quick read. It's
excellent.
It's an excellent book by, I know her last name is Brooks.
No, Bell Hooks.
Oh, Hooks. Yeah, okay, then I made a portmanteau in my head.
Yeah,
Bell Hooks. It's a book written in 2004 about the patriarchy and the necessity for men and women to recognize the need for men to express their feelings more and to be able to love openly. It's a very interesting book because it's not too old, and it's definitely very poignant.
Yeah.
And I think that a person who is interested in these topics might already know everything this book says, but it's still a very interesting thing to read because you get a very specific experience, point of view on the topic. So I really enjoyed reading it, and I
felt it was very eye-opening for me. I know for you said there wasn't that much new in there for you, but the whole way that she defines dominator culture, and she's like, dominator culture is about there being a group of people who get to dominate others, but it's bad for the dominators and the dominated. Worse for the dominated, of course, but bad for both, right? That, the way she formulated, I was like, this is a great way to think about it, and it was a I felt her framework was really good. So I think, I can definitely say for me there was definitely new stuff in there. So
I think it's a good book that if anyone, I can't imagine a person where I would say you probably wouldn't enjoy this or something. Also, again, it's short, so it's not a big commitment. I read it in 2 days. Furthermore, I'm watching Peacemaker season 2. Speaking of healthy masculinity, Peacemaker season 2. It's going strong. It's not for everyone, for sure.
Yeah.
It's extremely R-rated.
Yeah.
And it's full of like James Gunn-isms.
Yeah.
So if you don't like his stuff, don't watch it. But if you like his work, it's definitely a lot of fun. I appreciate that, like, this is kind of like his playground. He has talked about in like podcasts and interviews how he likes it so much, Peacemaker, because it's the everything goes show.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need to appeal to a broad cinematic audience. It can just really be for those few people, but it's still the highest rated TV show on HBO Max, no matter what he does. And like, he gets to do stuff like, okay, what if we had a full action scene by a bird? What if a bird had a full action scene where the bird got to be a badass? It's like, have we had this yet? No.
Yeah.
And he does it. And then it's like, next episode, what do we do yet? No.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's Peacemaker does what's the movie? Die Hard. Yeah, that's what we're doing this episode. We had a superhero Die Hard thing yet. Kind of Batman is that, but not really.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah. It's so fun.
I wanted to say, by the way, so the Napoleon book I'm reading is Napoleon: A Life by Andrew Roberts. So Alrighty. Well, that's plugs. That'll just about do it for this episode. I don't know how many it is because I'm standing outside in nature and I don't have the script in front of me.
We are
However,
beyond numbers. We are looking at your past numbers. This is the green peaceful episode.
the sunset is really amazing from up here.
Telling
But
you.
anyways, so that'll just about do it for this episode. If you want more, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as youtube.com/@afriendlyorbit. And if you have any astral echoes you want to send us, you can email us at afriendlyorbit@gmail.com. All one word.
All right, Ceres. I'll talk to you later. And to all of our fellow Voyagers, we will catch you out there amongst the stars.